Hey everyone, welcome to the group chat. I've got Andrew Hyde here. We're going to be talking about the bucket list that God has for your life. Andrew, this last week, Pastor John talked about that God has an intentional plan for your life. But before we dive into that, have you ever had a bucket list? Like, do you have a bucket list right now?
Man, I would love to go to like Colombia,
Yeah.
someplace in South America.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, Argentina, stuff like that. It's just one of those things. It just popped into my head, and like Cartagena, Bogota, places in Colombia.
Nice.
Big time fan.
Right on. So that's on your bucket list. Have you crossed anything off?
Not those particularly. There was some stuff in the past that I've had to scratch off, but I didn't accomplish. But it was just things that it was my own personal goals and stuff like that.
Right. I understand. Yeah. So, in your past, what were some of the things that you scratched off? Maybe plans that you had?
I actually came out of the military. I was military intelligence, and I thought I was going to be some CIA
Yeah.
agent or something. I'm going to be Jack Ryan, but go be an analyst for the government. I actually had signed a contract to go work for the military, like Department of Defense in Hawaii.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hawaii, man, that'd be
I was going
awesome.
to be a beach bum, wearing Hawaiian shirts all day
Yeah,
long.
man. Would you pick up surfing while you're there?
I was going to try. Not to say that I would have been any good at it because I suck
Yeah.
at skateboarding. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that the same thing would have happened.
Same
there.
physics, just include water.
Yeah, and like coral reef, the burning, picking it out of my skin. So.
Yeah. Well, sometimes our bucket list is so far out of what God has in store for our life that it does change, and it changes
Absolutely.
as we engage in our relationship with God. How was your Christmas with your family? Did you guys have a good Christmas together?
It was great, man. I was able to take vacation. Somebody had, we only supposed to have two people off at a time. Somebody scratched their name off, and I was like,
Yeah.
there we go. I got
Right
my
on.
3 days, and I'll be able to go. I was able to go home for Christmas, back to Louisiana.
Yeah.
My real home.
Yeah. Oh, whatever. You're a Texan now, man. You can't escape it.
There are no Texas stars in my home. Wendy will not allow it.
So next Christmas, what you're saying is anyone listening needs to buy you some Texas decorations for your house.
Make sure you save the receipt.
Well, even with our Christmas plans, sometimes those change dramatically. We can have this ideal Christmas experience that we want to have with our family or our friends, and sometimes it doesn't work out that way. I know that Christmas can be really hard for some people. It's been hard for me at different times in my life. Why do you think that is?
I think just sometimes wounds of the past. I mean, we have had, in my family, we've had grandfather and great uncles that just wouldn't talk to each other. And then one day they had made up. And so we're thrown back into a scenario where we're meeting people for the first time, and we're, 8, 10 years old. And it's still, you can feel the tension.
Yeah.
It's happening other times, just people have different opinions on what should happen. And then when you get there, somebody's left frustrated, and somebody didn't get what they thought they deserved, or there's many different reasons why I couldn't really say.
Well, I like that you referred to what happened whenever you were like 10 years old, because sometimes I believe, I fully believe that what happens in our past can actually limit what we experience today or in our future. The way we view our life is shaded by those lenses of interactions from the past. And in a lot of ways, that's what makes Christmas or holidays difficult with family, is because you have those experiences and you have those past hangups. What are some steps that you've taken in life to move past some of those past hurts? And have you been able to experience, maybe the ideal holiday experience with your family?
There's been times in the past where I've kind of not had the Christmas spirit.
Yeah.
I've been the Grinch, and that's just, there were struggles in my family in the past, and Christmas was actually. I kind of jump back a minute on that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there was a time my parents actually separated when I was 14.
Yeah.
And they actually bought us tickets to a hockey game.
Sure.
And the day we were supposed to go to the hockey game as a Christmas present, they told us about the separation.
Man, I'm so sorry, dude.
And that was like a moment, pivotal moment, where it was just like, that was a reminder coming around Christmas time, it was always kind of a reminder of that situation.
Yeah.
And I know that put a filter on how I looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the dealing with it,
Mm-hmm.
I just had to forgive and let go of that wound
Yeah.
and let God heal it,
Mm.
because it was really like a spot where the enemy could really attack me and steal my joy from that season, which is meant for a season to be joyful.
I've heard people say, "I'll forgive, but I'll never forget." Is that the process that you're talking about when you talk about forgiveness? How has that actually played out? I mean, this is a yearly reminder of something tragic that happened in your life, man. I know there's some people out there that are listening today or watching this podcast today. They are like, man, I can't believe I have to relive this over and over. Maybe there was a death in the family around Christmas time, or maybe there was a split, a divide, a fight, or maybe they just miss, someone from their family. And like you said, they either have to forgive or work out, how to deal with that pain during the Christmas season. How did you forgive? Like, what did that actually look like?
I think some of it was that I just came to understand as I matured.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a child then,
Sure.
came to understand what was actually the causes, and that people are not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that as I started making mistakes, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't as easy as what it sounds like. Me as a child thinking, well, why don't they just stay together? Or why didn't it work out this way? Or why did God allow this? And then I start realizing that's not really the way things operate. But then also just letting it go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like easy. Just let it go. But
Yeah.
it's not always that way. But just not focusing on the negative all the time. Trying to remember the times that we went on family vacations, or we had a great Christmas. There was a Christmas where my parents did a big scavenger hunt. They started leaving clues all over the house, and we finally ended up going to the point where we find the bikes out in the garage, and we were able to. That was our first brand new bikes we'd ever had, and so that was like a memory that was before the hockey incident, but it was just like hey, this is something that I always hold on to.
Yeah.
And I try to emulate with my kids, try to make it a fun game for them.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think those are really great tools to look at maybe life experiences, is to really value what was special, to forgive and let go maybe the situation that caused you the most pain, or the situation that caused you to have the hang up or the hurt. I've heard Pastor John say, and I think it's true, that we absolutely have to let go of our past to grab a hold of the future. And man, I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. To tie that in with this week's message, the bucket list, that God has for your life. I think we get caught up in the ideal of what we want to experience and we want to see happen, and it doesn't always pan out. But the truth of what God's word says is that God actually has plans for your life. How does someone understand or maybe develop an understanding of what those plans look like? What are some steps that you've taken to understand what God has in store for your life, so that you have that hope out in front of you, something that you can grab a hold of in your future?
I think I stopped looking at what everybody else was doing, like the comparisons.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Because I was always like, this person's doing this, maybe I can do that. Or this person made a lot of money doing this, maybe I can do that. Because that was another thing. I was always worried about not having enough money.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, but there was that, I tried to do something that other people were meant to do instead of finding what God put inside of me for me to do.
Well, that's a powerful statement. That goes from the idea of keeping up with the Joneses to like the greatest tragedy is missing what you were designed to do.
Absolutely.
And so, if I'm going to understand God's plan for my life, I got to quit comparing myself to other people. What are some other steps I can take? Steps that you're taking maybe right now?
Digging in with what God's got for me, trying to build that relationship, because if I'm just trying to do it on my own, I'm just, again, using the comparisons. I'm letting my fears come in, because sometimes my fear is what, I haven't walked in faith enough with God to say, hey, I'm going to trust you
Yeah.
and take this next step.
Yes.
That we
Yeah.
talk about next steps all the time, but if you're still so afraid of what that's going to look like, you're never going to step out and see what opens up for you because of that step. Because I mean, if a door opens up for you, but you're always like, well, what if this doesn't work out? What if this fails? What if people make fun of me? What if all those things? When you look at them from that other perspective of you've moved forward, you've taken that step, and then you can turn around and say, look what God did for me.
Yeah.
He opened this door and he gave me the boldness to step through. He gave me the gifts that he put inside of me. He unlocked them whenever I was obedient and I stepped through.
Yeah, and I want to hold on to the confidence that you're talking about to overcome fear, because fear is like that giant that stands in the way from me attaining what God wants for my life, that bucket list he has for me, the plans that were in him before I was ever a thought in my parents' life. I want to take fear, cancel it out, remove it from my life. And I think for me personally, I take my fear to the Lord in prayer. I spent some time just talking to God as my Father, who's also Lord of all, King of all. So he's not just my Father, but he's a king. He has a bucket list for my life. And so I want to take those fears and just go to him and say, God, you know what? This is really challenging me right now, and I need you.
So what about if you look at it from the other way of the bucket list, these things that God's put on your heart,
Yeah.
and then you, like you said, you sit in fear, and then all you have left is regret because you didn't do these things,
Yeah.
and then you're like, instead of going through that progression of building your faith,
Yeah.
you're allowing the enemy to chop your faith down,
Oh, wow.
and you allow regret to trap you in that what could have been.
Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible way of viewing it. That gives me courage to just engage with what God has in front of me, that next step that I need to take. And if you're out there today and you're struggling with your next step, or maybe the fear of the plan that God has for you is confronting you, have the courage, go to your Father, trust that he's going to provide everything that you need to fulfill what he wants for your life. We're so excited that you were stopping by today, checking out the get-together and this group chat. So we're so thankful for you. And we're going to continue the conversation. You can check us out on Spotify. And I'm going to continue to talk to Andrew about this last week's message and what it looks like when we try to get God to co-sign on our bucket list.